deportation operation in history, Trump also vowed to tighten the border and make big changes to America's immigration system, including the possibility of ending birthright citizenship. Now, as he's poised to take office again, he is doubling down on that promise.
You promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
We're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need two, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
That interview was just last week, and it was Trump's first interview since winning the election. And before we move on, let's do some cleanup on aisle 14, because Donald Trump got a couple of facts wrong in that telling. The United States is not the only country that grants birthright citizenship. More than 30 other countries around the world have the same policy, including both of our closest neighbors, Canada and Mexico. It's also not true that the United States grants citizenship to just anyone by setting foot on American soil. Birthright citizenship, as Kristen Welker noted in that interview, is enshrined in the 14th Amendment. Indeed, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment states very plainly, quote, all people born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States and the state where they reside. And while Donald Trump seemed only to have concepts of a plan for getting around the 14th Amendment in his mission to end birthright citizenship, it does seem that some in Trump world are coming up with a strategy for taking this on. The Trump campaign laid out a plan in Agenda 47, that's Trump's official policy manifesto, to use executive orders to direct federal agencies to deny passports and Social Security numbers to the children of undocumented immigrants. That would, of course, be plainly unconstitutional, and lawsuits would immediately be filed. But according to Politico's reporting this weekend, that might be the point. All of this seems to be part of a long-term strategy to get the issue of birthright citizenship and presidential authority over the conferral of citizenship before the Supreme Court, which, don't forget, is controlled by a 6-3 conservative supermajority that includes 3 Trump appointees. The incoming administration wants to take birthright citizenship to the United States Supreme Court because they think they can win there. So it's worth taking stock of just how radical this idea is. And to do that, we need to understand what birthright citizenship is, why it exists in the first place, and why efforts to undermine it are inherently rooted in a history of white supremacy. The 14th Amendment is one of the 3 Reconstruction-era amendments that Congress added to the United States Constitution after the United States Civil War. It was passed with the purpose of unequivocally granting citizenship to the formerly enslaved and their descendants. Moreover, the 14th Amendment was meant to be a corrective to the Supreme Court's 1858 decision in Dred Scott versus Sandford, the decision that many legal scholars consider to be, quote, the worst ever rendered by the Supreme Court. And there were a lot to choose from. In that case, Dred Scott, an enslaved man who traveled with his enslaver to free territories, sued for his freedom after his enslaver died. But the majority of the justices on the Supreme Court concluded that slaves were not citizens of the United States. In fact, the court questioned whether the descendants of African slaves could ever be citizens of the United States. The Supreme Court dismissed Dred Scott's case on procedural grounds, holding that as a non-citizen, Scott had no standing to bring his claim in federal court in the first instance. The 14th Amendment sought to remedy the stain of Dred Scott by making it clear that regardless of their descent, all persons born in the United States are citizens of the United States. And subsequent Supreme Court cases have affirmed this principle over the years. Of note is the case of Wong Kim Ark, a man of Chinese descent who was born in California in 1873. His parents were legal immigrants, but at the time, anti-Asian sentiment was pervasive across the country. This was the era of the Chinese Exclusion Acts, which included a provision that rendered Chinese immigrants ineligible for naturalization as American citizens. The Supreme Court, however, found that because Wong Kim Ark himself was born here in the United States, he was a citizen of the United States under the 14th Amendment. That's jus soli birthright citizenship.